When and how should you rebalance your portfolio? If you're not sure how to answer that, join me in today's episode where Mark and I discuss all the details, from frequency to tax implications to special considerations for retirees, as well as the consequences of neglecting rebalancing.
It's easy to get lost on the way to retirement. Things like taxes, improper planning, and excessive market risk can all lead you astray from your goal of a successful and happy retirement. That's where Liz Whittaberry comes in. She's a holistic financial advisor and the founder of Best Path Advisors, and she can help guide you to a better financial path. This is Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. It's Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry and myself, here to talk about the buzzword of rebalancing the portfolio. So how and when, and just some good conversation around that topic. It's important to have those chats. I think a lot of times we feel like this stuff gets done automatically for us. And I think some things do, but you also have to set that up. So we'll talk with Liz about that this week here on the podcast. As always, if you got some questions, need some help, please reach out to a qualified professional like Liz before you take any action on anything you hear from our podcast or any other. And of course, you can find her online at bestpathadvisors.com. That's bestpathadvisors.com. She's the founder and financial advisor. Liz, how you doing? What's going on?
I am good. I'm good. It's June, and so that's great. We are having a lot of that bad weather here in Texas that you're hearing about, but I've got clients that have had some hail damage. I've had some hail damage, but
really?
looking forward to having a really nice June, and all the rain has made everything green.
Well, there you go. There's the silver lining, right? You're going to find the silver lining in something, and maybe we can find the silver lining in rebalancing our portfolio. It doesn't sound like, something that I think a lot of us tend to take it for granted. Like I was just kind of teasing when we were talking there, setting this up, is that, sometimes we have these things, I guess we assume they're going to do them on their own. Maybe they do, whatever the case is. So let's just get into the conversation this week. What is it, and just kind of like walking through some important things to know. So I guess let's just kick it off there. Like, explain what rebalancing your portfolio actually means, maybe why it's important and how often should we do it?
To rebalance is to bring back in balance, if you look up the meaning of the word. And when we're talking about the balance for your portfolio, we're talking about your asset allocation. So what's your mix of stocks and bonds? How much in your stocks do you want that are large caps, mid cap, small cap? How do you want to divide that out?
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that is to manage risk. So that desired allocation is going to set how much risk you have in the portfolio, meaning how much volatility are you going to have? And if that allocation drifts away from your desired allocation, then you rebalance it to bring it back in line. That is a risk management activity. And so you're going to sell the things that have gotten to be too big compared to what you wanted.
Right.
You're going to buy some things that are smaller than what you wanted. That can be hard for people to do because you're selling winners and buying losers. But you have to remember that you're selling at a high and buying at a low.
Ideally.
And ideally, because you're selling the winner. They would be at the higher. And then over time, by doing that, you're going to manage the risk and keep that in line with the risk that you want to have, which will help you stick with your portfolio allocation and help you stay on track for all of your goals long term.
So how often should we be doing this, and do some of our accounts do this for us?
We should do this optimally once a year. At least that's what research says.
Okay.
You don't need to do that more frequently than that because that's going to create some unnecessary drag on the portfolio. You're going to give up more than you're getting for it. But if you rebalance less than once a year, that could let too much risk creep in over time. So you need to be looking at that once a year to make sure that you're in line. There are robo-advisors, and we can talk about that more, but that would automatically rebalance. There are types of mutual funds that have an asset allocation within them, but you shouldn't assume that you're automatically being rebalanced back to your own personal allocation without actually taking a look at it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So is rebalancing, and clearly if you're talking about, if the point of this is risk management, which is what you were saying, then clearly we're going to view this differently at a younger age versus an older age, right? Again, which is why the risk conversation comes into play. So maybe that rebalancing conversation becomes different as we age.
It does. In my opinion, it definitely does. When you're younger, then rebalancing is really very simple because you just want to get back to that desired asset allocation, 80% stock, 20% bonds, whatever that might be
Mm-hmm.
at that young age, where you're trying to achieve growth, you're accumulating, you're not taking money out of the portfolio. But when you get close to retirement or you are retired, then you have that other issue to think about, which is how am I going to take distributions from my portfolio? And so that adds another dimension. You now have to think about the timelines of the distributions that are coming out of the portfolio so that you can manage that sequence of returns risk that we talked about in the past. And so you've got the timeline of the money I'm going to spend now in the next 5 years, the money I'm going to spend soon
Mm.
from 5 to 10 years, and the money I'm going to spend later beyond 10 years. Those are three different timelines. And you want to be looking at how much do you have in each bucket. When you're rebalancing, do you need to rebalance the amounts in the buckets? Do you need to move more up into the now bucket or into the soon bucket? And then looking at each of those buckets individually, what is the risk for that bucket?
Okay.
And if you have a legacy goal, then you would have a fourth bucket that would be that legacy goal. So creating that retirement income plan, in my mind, is really a lot like running a pension fund where you're projecting out the cash flows and the assets and income streams. You're needing to match those income streams to the assets that are going to support each of those cash flows over that 25 to 30-year retirement. And each year, make sure that you have rebalanced to have that in line with your income plan.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, you mentioned the robo-advisor. I was asking about the automaticness. Is there accounts that can do that, or do we need to turn that on? I think for maybe where I was thinking about this was target date funds, for example, right? I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we feel and we hear and we're told that by selecting those, that as we get closer to that target date, they rebalance themselves or they reduce the risk. And maybe people confuse that. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's an interesting study that has just come out that I haven't read, and I do want to read it, and we can maybe talk about that in a different one. That my understanding is it says they're not really doing the job that people think that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But target date funds do have a year attached to them, target date 2030.
Sure, whatever you
And
pick,
the
right.
idea is the idea is that you're retiring in 2030, so it's going to be set up to have the right asset allocation for somebody that's going to retire in 2030, and then it's going to be, maintaining over those retirement years. The problem I have with that is how does it know the individual needs of somebody retiring in 2030? Not everybody that comes in to see me that's retiring in 2030 has the exact same cash flow needs, the exact same risk tolerance. I don't see how that fits a individual plan the way that I look at bucket planning.
Gotcha.
And so I don't set my clients' portfolios to rebalance automatically. I review them every month to say, what distributions are we going to need in the next 1 to 3 months? What investments aren't serving the portfolio purposes any longer? What things have become too big of a percentage? Are there things that have started underperforming? And then keep that retiree's portfolio in line with their individual bucket plan when they're going to actually need money. And the target date fund is very general, very broad based, and it doesn't do that.
Yeah, it definitely isn't customized, right? I think a lot of times
Right.
we kind of feel like, oh, I picked this and I'm retiring in 2030, so yay, it's customized for me. No, not really. So
It may have more or less risk than you want.
Yeah,
How do
exactly.
you know what level of risk they've put
Yeah.
in there compared to what you want?
And I think a big misnomer too is that people feel like people that I've talked to that don't know anything about their retirement, they just kind of grab things because it's what they're told, and that's fine because we don't do that great education, which we talk about often here on the show. Is that it doesn't also go down to zero risk either. So don't be fooled thinking that a target date fund, when it gets closer to the date, is taking you all the way down to zip on the risk department.
Right.
That's not the case either. So certainly worthwhile. Maybe to your point, maybe we should do a little bit of investigating on that article you just read, and we'll do a podcast around that. Tax implications. Anything there to consider there when we're thinking about rebalancing?
I've heard a lot of times in the industry, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. And I'm
Right.
sure you've heard it too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And while I agree that taxes can't be the only consideration, that is true.
Sure.
As you know, I'm very focused on tax planning. I think that tax planning adds significant value to a retirement plan because if you minimize income taxes over time, that tax savings adds up. It might be just a little bit in 1 year, but over time, it's going to add up to be a significant impact on your lifetime tax bill that improves your portfolio over the years as you go because you're taking less out to pay taxes. So I always look for opportunities to rebalance using tax loss harvesting or tax gain harvesting if that's something that fits for that year. And then if clients aren't in a position to benefit from those, then I try to spread out that cost of rebalancing over a couple of tax years. Maybe we're going to rebalance and it's going to create some tax. We could do half of that in the last quarter of the year and the other half in the first quarter of the next year. And within a short period of time, we've rebalanced, but we have kept the tax at a lower tax bracket.
So, Liz, as we're wrapping this up, maybe share a story with us or a little anecdote or something about someone's portfolio who maybe had gone too long without a rebalance, or a conversation that you've had with someone, why they did that or what the ramifications were. Kind of highlight that a little bit for us. Stories always do a great job with that.
I can tell you about one client that had a lot of stock in a company that he had worked in this industry, and this company had always done well. And an older family member had told him, never sell that stock. And they took that advice to heart. They didn't sell the stock. They just let it keep growing, reinvesting dividends. And it became a large percentage of their portfolio, 25% of the portfolio.
Oh, wow. That's hefty. Yeah.
And then the company began having issues. Their family member was long passed on. They weren't there to give them any advice on that. And when they became clients, one of the things that I did was over time reduce that to a small amount and then reinvest it in other companies that are performing better. That gave them diversification and gave them better.
Did they give you kind of pushback, or were they reluctant to let that go because of that advice they had gotten?
Initially, yes. Yeah. But as the company had more problems, then they were very appreciative that they didn't have so much riding on just one company.
Yeah.
And that I had made the decisions on when to make that change and what to invest in and increase the dividends, improve the portfolio so that it was lined up with their bucket plan, and kept a little bit for that, the sake of the fact that that's a company that they've been attached to and they've had for a very long time. So they still have a small amount, but it's not going to mess up the portfolio or mess up the retirement plan.
Great point.
And, I see that with other people too, that they have kept their company stock and not sold that just because it's hard to decide when to sell it. It's hard to decide what to get instead of it, how to reinvest that money. Mm-hmm. And they're familiar with their company or they're familiar with their industry. And so that becomes an outsized piece. And sometimes it even makes it difficult on the tax planning that we want to do. So if people start working with me earlier, we can do a plan that helps them work out of having too much in one company and be sure that when they get ready to retire, that they have the right level of diversification. But that's a rebalancing issue that I do see that people fall into.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? And especially sometimes if you have that emotional attachment because someone told you, or maybe you got gifted something from mom and dad or somebody special or whatever, and you hang on to it, and if they hadn't made those changes and the company kept diving, right, 25%, that could have been really detrimental. So I'm sure they, again, they were appreciative of the fact it's like, okay, yes, we have this sentimental attachment, but maybe this isn't the best move. So great story there for sure. So are those common mistakes, that you're seeing kind of something like that, or is that a little bit more uncommon, or maybe just what are some common mistakes that, people tend to make when it comes to rebalancing?
Yeah, I do. I do think that is very common with people that are working with companies that give them stock. And that is something that I see a lot where people have a lot in that company stock.
Yes, I get it, right? Because it makes sense. Yeah. And you're thinking, hey, this is great, whatever. And you're getting, but if you really truly think about it, would you have 25% in, I don't know, in any one other thing if you didn't work there or didn't have this, certain attachment to it? Probably not, right?
Yeah. Other common mistakes are just not realizing that you need to rebalance or necessarily knowing how to rebalance. Rebalancing is a lot like, at times, cleaning the weeds out of the garden.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Making sure that you're moving pulling out the things that really aren't serving you well or aren't fitting anymore and putting in some things that are better.
Choking off your tomatoes, right? Those weeds are choking your tomatoes out, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a good point. Well, I think at the end of the day, right, how does it fit into your broader investment strategy, right? It's about asset allocation, diversification, risk management. So it's a big piece. If you think about rebalancing, it really ties into those three other big components. And most people, I think would agree that, they know that asset allocation, diversification, and risk management are probably going to be pretty key to their retirement strategy.
Yeah. And it's important to know what risk that you want to have and get your investment portfolio aligned with that risk, and then keep it on that track by doing that rebalancing from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how do you get on your best path? Well, you sit down and you have a conversation with a financial professional like Liz, and you make sure that you got all your little ducks in a row, and rebalancing is one of those, right? So in order to do that, make sure that you're reaching out and having a conversation with a qualified pro. And again, if you need some help, reach out to Liz. She's available at bestpathadvisors.com. That's bestpathadvisors.com. Lots of good tools, tips, and resources there to check out to get some more information. You can check out the good stuff. Lots of good things there. There's webinars, videos, her blog. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Check out her YouTube channel as well. She's got content on there. So lots of good ways to get some information. Just reach out to her at bestpathadvisors.com. Liz, thanks for hanging out and breaking down some rebalancing conversation this week. I always appreciate your time.
Thank you. I do too. Talk to you next time.
We'll see you next time, and you guys have a great week out there, and we'll catch you later on Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry. Again, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
The preceding program is sponsored by Best Path Advisors, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through J.W. Cole Advisors. Best Path Advisors, J.W. Cole Financial, and J.W. Cole Advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Liz Whittaberry should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or investment advice, nor as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Neither J.W. Cole Financial nor its representatives provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. Persons who provide such advice do so in a capacity other than as a registered representative of J.W. Cole. Investing is subject to risks, including the loss of principal. Due to volatility within the markets mentioned, opinions are subject to change without notice. Information is based on sources believed to be reliable, however, their accuracy or completeness cannot be guaranteed.